I felt like I was watching coronavirus take over Europe. I had family in Israel, so they were already in lockdown, and I'm like watching this virus spread, and I'm like, this is coming to America. So when they said that we were closed for 2 weeks, I was like, that's not gonna be the case. I just know it.
We began to get very concerned with the reports about COVID coming, and we were thinking so many people in Boston are clustered in big shelters, and with a transmissible disease, we've seen that many, many times over the years. It can go like wildfire if you're in close quarters in a shelter.
The shelter system completely changed. Women were just not able to come in like they did before to come and see advocates. The women that were staying in the shelter during that time were not able to leave. So it was like, if you leave, you can't come back.
This like unsettling anxiety came because I was like, what about my clients? What's going on with my clients? They're sitting there with bunk beds that are this close to each other while this virus is running rampant, and they're probably all freaking out. And now there's like this crazy rush more than ever for them to get out of the shelter.
You know, if you're in a shelter, your risk of dying is a fourth of what it is if you go outside and live outside. But when a communicable disease comes, the shelters become really scary places for the spread of a virus.
When it first hit, I remember distinctly, it really sort of came to the forefront on a Wednesday, and Thursday, folks were still mandated to come to court, which I thought was outrageous. Like, it really showed sort of the disproportionate impact. I remember a woman there with an oxygen tank, and I was telling her, like, you definitely should not be here. And I really saw sort of, you know, how unfair the system was to low-income folks speaking openly. I was pretty much in shock. I think we all were. It was really disorienting, I would say. There was a lot of calls coming in from tenants who were completely in crisis as far as they were out of work. How are they going to pay their rent?
Some of your clients don't have phones, they don't have computers. So we were doing what we could, but I was like, the second that we can go back into shelter, like I will go back. Thinking about what they were going through, I was like, I don't care if I get COVID. Like that was almost my thought process. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing my job right, and these guys need me.
People were living in a sense of the unknown, just not knowing what's gonna happen next and having no sense of control at all. And putting that pressure into, you know, not only a work atmosphere, but into everybody's individual lives.
It was affecting everyone on your team, and everybody was scared for each other. People were dying all around us in our own circles, so it was very hard.
I lost this client. She had been with the company for 5 years. I was her last housing advocate. Her name was Rona. Sweetest lady, you know, very proactive, hardworking, you know. Very sick mom. She was always there for her mom. She had a lot of challenges to her kids, you know. So we found her a beautiful new building, beautiful, oh my God, so much paperwork, so much back and forth, but she was on it. We got her moved in. You know, she was living her best life. At the beginning, I was able to go and see her a few times. I just wanted to make sure she was settled in. And then COVID hit, and I was like, Rona, I can't come see you anymore. I was used to calling her once a week. So just to check up on her, you know, we were already moving her on to stabilization. And then the managing office called me. She was just like, oh my God, Greet, I'm so sorry to call you. I know you're a worker, but I know how involved you were. I have this news to tell you. And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, she passed away. You know, they took her in the ambulance yesterday. I was so shocked.
One of my clients who had a fire in her unit, and during the pandemic, and she's a family. Yeah, she had her moments where she almost had a breakdown. You know, because imagine having a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old trying to tell them they're okay, was a hard part for her. So, but I made sure I called her therapist. I was her ear when she wanted to let go, and at that moment, I just let her vent. That's how we kind of survived that. She got her place, and we pushed on that place to go and pass inspection, and now she's housed.
Seeing the challenges that they were facing in their families, in their own health and mental health, and we're still human, and it's still hard. And we just make the choice to face them every day. Some days it's just, I'm ready to give up. And I think that hit a lot of people this time.
Oh, just to be able to take them these food boxes, to call them and tell them I got a little budget for food. Do you need anything? Oh my God, yes, I need some rice, and I haven't been able to leave my house. These are elderly women. Some of them don't have family. Some of them don't have that, that daughter to call you, Mommy, how you doing? How you feeling?
We went to the food pantries, got as much as we could, and left them on people's doors.
For our clients, and with the trauma of already having been unhoused, some for years, and then finally getting housed and going through such a destabilizing situation is scary for everyone. And we are the team that is kind of like the rock behind them to be able to say, you're gonna keep your housing, you're gonna get your rent paid, we're gonna pay your utilities, so the work never stops.
COVID taught us a lot around how important housing is, and to an extent that health started at home. And so as you think about that started with, was it overcrowded, right? And then I think the last is where neighborhoods, right? If you did a map of the city of Boston, where it was disproportionately seeing higher rates of infections were those disinvested neighborhoods dating back to the 1930s and redlining. And so I think being able to start to think about housing and homelessness needed to be part of our COVID response was intuitive to us at Boston Medical Center.
I've hated every second of COVID. I'm in my 70s and I'm in the high-risk category. So that has been just unnerving. But then for me personally, watching the staff respond to this, going into battle, knowing every day they could be getting COVID, has been truly inspiring. But what was even more inspiring was that it was really a community approach to something. It was everybody coming together to work on this. So, when I think of people in housing were equally vulnerable, and we had to make sure they were safe. We worked with the HomeStart folks, worked with our folks on so many different aspects of that. We were dealing with a community that you'd think would be rambunctious and not anxious to play, but they were alarmed and took care of one another. It was really quite extraordinary. One of the things I've loved about this job is that when you look at homelessness, since I think of it as affecting all aspects of a life, but the hospitals worked closely with, so the shelters were remarkable in what they were doing. They made themselves safer. The city and the state government were working together at finding alternative care sites. Everybody rallied together. So if ever there was an inspiring community effort, COVID brought that out of us.
We have banded together really well during COVID. And I think as we get more and more potentially tired, this is when we need to be the most vigilant, because we need to make sure that families are stable and are able to stay in their homes. And I think this is the time for us to really double down and work hard together, because we have a generation of kids that need us. And this is why things like HomeStart become really important.